Hi, folks. Welcome to I call this a PV Buzz Hangout. We're just starting. This is the very first episode, and we are happy enough to have the very, very popular Nico in the house. So some of you might already know him. He runs the very popular Suncast podcast, and he's also done a few. Quite a lot of trade shows by now. And if you quite remember, he did host a podcast with PV Buzz about a year ago. So Nico, thanks for hanging out. And well, the tradition of this sort of conversation is going to be, I'm going to introduce what I'm drinking, and you're going to introduce what you're drinking. So you're going to show us what you're drinking. So I'm drinking. This is a decaf sort of mixture here, a weird concoction.
Nice. I just finished. Well, I
What
just finished my very caffeinated beverage, but in the spirit, let's see if you can see this. Should consolidate. Oh, let's see.
Yeah, that's
tricky.
right. That's right.
There we go. You
Yeah,
see
there we
Sierra
go.
Nevada.
There we go.
There we go. The Gremlins don't want Sierra Nevada to get any credit here, but I'm drinking from my Sierra Nevada glass, the Water of Life. So
nice.
I'll let you decide what Water of Life means, but
Nice.
it's clear beverage in a Sierra Nevada glass.
To each their poison, right? It's
exactly.
I prefer this just to keep my chest warm. We've been having a very weird quasi warm cold spring. We're in downtown Toronto here. So where are you located now? Are you still in Mexico or?
I am in Durham, North Carolina. So we split time in Durham and in the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico. That's the most common question I get asked. Where are you right now? Are you in Mexico? It's hilarious how often I get asked that question. But no, I'm in Durham right now, and we are really enjoying the coming of spring. Pollen everywhere. My kids are drawing. I have a deck just to my right here, my backyard. My kids are literally drawing in the pollen right now. So we're enjoying all the things that come with spring, including the sneezes and the like.
Nice. And I'm glad you're keeping safe. Everybody's fine. So, well, this is a pandemic. In pandemic, we do chats, we do online chats. So, I'm very glad you took a few minutes out of your busy schedule to join us.
Yeah,
so,
my pleasure.
The whole idea here is, I want to talk to people that impress me in the industry, who do stuff that I think helps grow not only the industry in North America but all over, because what happens in North America, gets helps the global industry or sector as a whole.
I would argue what happens in Australia is the bleeding edge. Those guys seem to always be ahead of us, man.
For some reason, right? For some
I know.
For some weird reason. I can say the Australia solar industry is way ahead, way ahead of us. Those guys were installing Tesla power packs and mega packs way long before it was a thing here in North America, right? And now you see,
but Elon has a love affair with Australia, so there's that.
Oh well, there you go then. So back to you. Let's pop the question. I've been meaning to ask you this question for a very, very, very long time. I know what brought me or what attracted me to the solar space. And my story is more like everyone's story. It's like sort of a love story. There was a need. I stepped in to fulfill that need. So for you, what pulled you, or what made you decide to start Suncast podcast?
Yeah. Well, the Suncast podcast and my entry into the solar industry are definitely two very different things, and they're almost 10 years apart. There's two things that I think are important for your audience to kind of orient them. That would be, I'd say, further reading, additional listening or viewing. The first is, I actually answered the question of like, hey, how'd you get into this, with our friend Scott Sullivan on episode, I think 100 of the Suncast podcast. So if at mysuncast.com, it's easy to find like all the back episodes of the Suncast podcast. And I think that's a really interesting and useful one for folks that actually want to know my whole backstory. But in 2007, on the heels of spending a fair amount of time in Guatemala as a Peace Corps volunteer, and then finishing up my MBA, I saw what I thought was going to be a veritable wave of clean tech innovation, led by the Million Solar Roofs initiative and SB1 in California. At the time, Governor Schwarzenegger was essentially saying to the world, we're going to dominate the transition to clean, affordable electricity. And I had, as a Peace Corps volunteer, seen a whole lot of folks who would have benefited from some sort of revolution in clean, affordable electricity. And I was in the music industry for most of my life. That was my career up through my mid-20s. I was 26 at the time when I graduated, and SB1 was signed into law. Going into the summer of 2006, I formed a solar company with a partner at the time, a company called Blue Line Power, that's still in operation today. And over the course of the coming 14 plus years now, I have kind of grown up in the industry. And around about 2015, I realized that probably just through this sheer good fortune, nothing I had done other than being born white, male, and American, I had insight into an industry that was blossoming that other folks didn't have insight into. And I didn't think that it was fair that there was this veil between the haves and the have-nots of information. And I also saw this budding revolution in the radio industry called podcast. And I said, gosh, if not me, who? If not now, when? Like, let's start a podcast that shares the solar revolution with the rest of the world. And I did that through the lens of my friends in the industry who were building solar companies. And it's just been a fun ride ever since, as we've sort of grown into, unwittingly, in fact, a pseudo career podcast, helping others find their path in the solar and broader renewable energy revolution.
So how has the ride been so far? It's I'm guessing it wasn't as smooth as I mean, you mentioned episode 100, and so how many episodes, by the way? How many episodes do you have right now?
The podcast, we've done 360 episodes, and that's published. I think as of today, it's about maybe 359. We've recorded almost 400. By the time we get to SPI, we'll be over 400. We're at over 350,000 downloads total. But definitely, it's like building, I didn't start the Suncast podcast as a business. It was a hobby. I was a project developer at Conergy at the time that I started the podcast. And I started it as something I couldn't not do. I was born with a microphone in my hand. But if your question is how has the journey of kind of starting my own business in the media industry been, it has been, I would say, ups and downs of the psychosis of like, am I worthy enough to own my own business? Who am I to teach people anything or to do something that I claim to be good at, rather than working for someone else, right? You and I have had this conversation often. I just had a general disdain for being an employee, and I'm a terrible employee. So,
like every entrepreneur.
And so in retrospect, like I've told you, my driving mentality for the last 5 years has been, I want to work on my own terms. I want to work time and location independent, which is how I was able to free myself from the corporate culture that wouldn't have allowed me to relocate my family to Mexico. And I spent a year plus in Mexico, continuing to build Suncast. I'm grateful too, because it was during the pandemic when my own consulting revenue, which is kind of how I kept the building afloat, dwindled a bit, as everyone did during the pandemic. And we doubled down on content. And so in 2020, we launched 5 events, virtual events. We are now really, I'd say, well known in the industry for our virtual events. We had our Clean Energy Summit, our Career Summit, which was a test for us of the products that we're pushing out now that are helping train folks into how to build a career in the industry. We did the Clean Energy for Biden event. We were the producers behind that event back in January.
I watched that.
It was a super fun event, right?
Very,
4 hours
very fun.
of basically a fully produced TV show for 4 hours.
I'd say this though, it was not just only an awesome event, but it was a calming event. I was so excited that I had there was this euphoria in the air. That like I think everybody was just drunk with like
the euphoria, as you said.
Yeah.
So that's how it's been for us. It's been a year over year of rediscovering what we're good at, doubling down on that. Finding friends in the marketplace like you, Derek, that we can collaborate with and just bat ideas back and forth. and watching the clean energy revolution come to fruition.
Yeah, but let's step back a second. You answered the second part of the question, but the first part of the question is like the podcast itself. You started this as a hobby. It has grown now into a business. Let's forget about the business part for a second. Let's talk about the podcast itself.
Yeah.
Specifically, I mean, there might be people out there thinking of starting something. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
They might be watching you talk about how, I started this as a hobby 14 years ago, and now it's this big thing, and I'm hosting Biden events, right? But how did you get from 80 to wherever you are right now? I don't think you're actually at Z yet, because you still have a lot to do. But the podcasting itself, the process, the burnouts, the struggling to book interviews, the all that, how, because I think at this point you are just coasting, but
it feels that way sometimes to you, doesn't it?
But how did it get here?
I think I understand the question. Let me take a crack at it. So I believe that how you do anything is how you do everything. And historically, I was very disorganized, and that's how my podcast started. And I took what I think was one of the best decisions I ever made. I took $5,000 of my savings and I hired a coach. And that coach, Jeff Brown, he gave me the foundation, the fundamentals for how to start a podcast, gave me a template to follow. He coached me through launching. And now I do that for others who want to launch their media business, podcast, YouTube, et cetera. But along the way, you have to build systems or you'll fail. Like, Derek, if you didn't have a system for how to publish, you wouldn't publish a daily and very useful newsletter and website that folks use as a resource and a guide to their own information and introduction to our industry. And that's maybe the thing that I would share with folks is, if you don't have a system, you will fail. And we've developed a very, very cohesive system that, candidly, like I've informed through, because I'm very good at coming up with ideas. I'm very good at structuring thoughts. And I had to hire a team around me, and I spent most of the income that came in through sponsorship paying for a team that built out the tools to help me manage the process. And I realized early on that if I didn't get a buffer of content, and now, as you know, we have like 8 weeks of content typically buffered out. I know what's going to publish now between now and June, and it's already recorded here in early April. So that's the the doldrum of content creation is real. We try to help folks. We try to help buffer that reality for folks by giving them the systems and the tools to be able to produce that content in a rhythm that feels natural to them. For us, we produce 2 episodes a week. Some are lucky to produce 2 episodes a month. But our podcast downloads really started cranking and visibility started coming together in 2018, maybe 2017, when I really doubled down 2 years in and said, okay, I'm going to produce a piece every week. And if there's one piece of advice I would give to anybody, YouTube or podcast creator related, or brand, if you are an industry brand who wants to start creating content, is that you have to remain consistent. Consistency is key. Yeah. Absolutely. It's key for you with your newsletter and your website. It's as it is with me with the podcast. My listeners now expect a new episode every Thursday. And if I don't deliver one, they ask, hey, what's up, man? How you doing? And that's only happened. We've missed delivering on Thursday. We haven't missed delivering an episode a week in more than 2 years. We missed delivering on Thursday earlier in the year for technical reasons. And I had emails, hey, dude, where's the next episode? What happened?
It's
real. I love it.
That's cool. So I think so what do you do? Like, what's your go-to solution for avoiding burnout? Because I know a lot of this I've worked with because I also do some coaching. I also help people with their online presence and things like that. And some people it's when they start seeing some success, because when they start seeing some success and then it starts generating business for them, they get busy.
Yeah.
Then they start shutting down what they're doing, because forgetting that it's because you're doing this that is happening. That's right. Why you need to keep doing this and even more, right?
Yeah.
Or some other people just burn out because again, this is online. This is the digital age. You put in, you shake, and whatever comes out, right? There's no magic formula to this. So some people just burn out. They just get tired, and then they move on to something else. And maybe that next post was their next breakthrough point, because it doesn't.
That's right.
And you and I have noticed it doesn't. Yeah, it slowly grows, but you can actually pinpoint the week it blew
Yeah.
up. Right.
Yeah.
All you just
Yep.
need is that one person to subscribe or to join or to listen to your podcast and then share it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you get that notoriety. Right. So
Yeah.
So what do you do? What do you do to avoid burnout and, to keep your team focused, to keep yourself focused?
Yeah. So there's a lot in that question. I'll try to be succinct, which I'm not known for. Anyone who listens to my podcast knows they're usually 60+ minute troves of information. So how do I avoid burnout and how do I remain consistent are in some ways different. I'll go back to the fact that I have a team that I've kept employed through the pandemic at my own expense when I didn't have income. That kept me sane. Derek, you and I have shared conversations where I was in tears, not about to be in tears, but in tears about my own physical pain. So on top of the pandemic, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease in late 2019, ahead of the pandemic, and had to get real about what I prioritize. Yeah. So my advice for anyone who's struggling with a sense of burnout is you've got to get to a place where, and this can be through through finding partners and sponsors or through additional consulting income, which at first is stressful. You got to get to a place where you have some sort of recurring income coming in that you can use to subsidize the cost of your team, that gives you the headspace and the freedom to be able to sit back and work on the business instead of in the business. Yeah. And for me, so physically, I ascribe to mindfulness and meditation as a way to center my mind, as a way to think, to be more focused. I also harness the fact that as an adult ADHD sufferer, I have a superpower that allows me to think faster and take on more mental weight than many of my peers. My wife and I talk about this at length, but it also means that I say yes to more things than I say no to. Yeah. That's another transition. One way that you avoid burnout is saying no to more things than you say yes to. Derek Sivers says it needs to be a hell yes or a no.
No, yeah.
And if you apply that filter, a hell yes or a no, you have to say no to a lot more things. So having a good team, having a great system for how to manage the work that you're doing, whether that work is delivering for a client or delivering a consistent product in the form of a podcast, and then not taking yourself so seriously. Honestly, you've seen this transformation for me in the last year. I just don't take myself so seriously as a podcaster anymore, that I have this mountain of weight of expectation from my sponsors or my listeners. I'm good at what I do. I love what I do. And I know that I have this personal conviction that every single day I touch the podcast, every single week I produce a piece of content. And I remember one critical piece that Steven Pressfield talks about in The War of Art, that we're building a body of content, not a piece of content. Google doesn't give a crap that you created one pillar that gets 14,000 views and likes in an hour. They care that you created 14,000 pieces of content over a period of time that is going to help educate their audience. And that's what Suncast right now, if you look at it, there's nobody in the clean energy space that has created as many podcasts as we have. Energy Gang's been around 2 years longer. They're at just over 300 episodes. We're at 360 and counting, 2 a clip every week. And I'm about to deliver even more. Like you and I've talked about what we're getting ready to do in 2021 that nobody's doing right now in the industry. My advice to everyone else is, look, just commit. You have to commit to your niche. My niche has always been solar. I've expanded a little bit for clean energy, but the reality is there is no work-life balance. There is a pendulum. Sometimes the pendulum swings to work. Sometimes it swings to life. When I was in Mexico, my pendulum was heavily on the life side, and I had spent 3 years building a business with systems and a team that allowed me to get the same amount of work done in less time.
Excellent. And it's I really like the way you touch on a few things here, which also just makes me want to ask this question is, with all the many interviews you've done, which one stands out? Like, can you say this interview really something happened here, and why?
Yeah. I can tell you, I keep a list, a running list, because people naturally ask me, Nico, what episode? I'm pulling it up here on my computer now so I can look down at it because
Yeah, that's fine.
it's as they say, it's like choosing which child is your favorite child. But
To talk about that.
right. So, but I really want to give you. So, what you're asking for is if someone were to go listen to one piece of content on Suncast, is there one that for me represents maybe the essence of Suncast? I can't say that there is one. What I can tell you is that when I think about which episodes are impactful, because I also create, as I've told you before, I create Suncast in part for me. I listen to these episodes. I listen back to them, and I want to know what I'm able to learn. So I've got a top 10. If I still think that the Suvi Sharma episode, believe it or not, number 63, I think it's like maybe my all-time favorite. Episode 142 with Costa Nicolau was the first time that I ever was driving. I'll never forget this. I was driving in El Cerrito, back to my friend Scott's house when I was listening to the end of Costa's episode, Costa Nicolau from Panel Claw. And I remember pausing this is one of those moments as a creator. I remember pausing it and saying to myself, holy, that's good. Right? And I'm a podcast junkie, dude. So that was like 142 episodes in. I finally looked at something and said, I really admire the work that I'm doing.
Yeah.
So those two in particular stand out. There are a ton of really amazing episodes. I think most inspiring episode that people have told me about is Devin Welch from Sun Tribe. That's episode 157. You'll notice a trend. Like I'm at episode 357, 359 right now. And I'm quoting back to episodes that were in the hundreds because that's where like the seminal work of discovering who is Suncast, what is Suncast was done. So kind of everything since 300 represents like who we are right now because I'm in a rhythm that's comfortable for me now. And we're exploring even further, right? Like the last episode of 2020 with CPS Energy was fantastic. It was an in-story NPR narrative style content that I really am proud of that episode. But I still would say like the one that I loved that for me was like, oh my gosh, I've interviewed a titan in the industry that few people know about, and I have like extracted his thoughts on building a solar company. Suvi Sharma created Solaria, which Nextracker was spun out of, which now Howard Wenger runs. Like that's mind-blowing. I'll go with Suvi. How's that?
That's actually an impressive one. I wasn't even thinking about that high up there. That's wow.
Yeah.
So what's next for Nico?
We have a human capital problem. We don't have really an infrastructure problem that's unsolvable that people haven't thought about in the clean energy or the broader like energy transition. What we have is a human capital problem. And I'll tell you, I was on the phone with a guy who runs a publicly traded company. It was actually the largest IPO on the London Stock Exchange this year. And I shared with him some of the work that we're doing with our Mission Minded program and our thoughts around the human capital issue that's happening as hundreds of thousands of careers are becoming stranded assets, not just the stranded assets of oil rigs, but hundreds of thousands of humans are becoming stranded assets in the oil and gas industry unnecessarily. Yeah. So what's next in the Suncast evolution is how do we address that human capital problem with tools that help train them on transitioning effectively to the energy future that is inevitable. And, he said something that sticks in my mind. He said, nobody ever hires someone expecting to fire them, right? So you see 25,000 layoffs at Exxon, 150 plus now thousand layoffs across the oil and gas industry since the pandemic started. None of those people were hired with the express interest or intent of firing them, right? Or laying them off. So what do we do with that? The oil and gas industry is in a crisis, a human capital crisis right now. And I think as a clean energy industry, we have, that is, by the way, creating some of that crisis. We have an obligation to extend an olive branch. And we haven't done that very well.
Absorb that.
Yeah, we haven't done that well in the past. We have not been good citizens in the energy community in that regard. There's a lot of nose snubbing and disdain on the clean energy industry side because of those fossil fuel guys that
Yeah, it's
have
us
been.
versus you.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I just don't think that that serves our industry. It doesn't serve those humans who chose a career because it was a thriving career
Back
20,
then, yeah.
30 years ago, even 10 years ago. You know,
But
let's look back.
Keep in
Yeah,
mind,
go
though,
ahead.
some of those people are very, very well trained and very smart people.
Absolutely.
Keep in mind, I've seen some really, really weird installers in our industry. So
Yes.
and the amount of money that goes, because you don't just show up in a coal mine and you
That's
start
right.
digging, or you don't just show up on an oil rig, right? Those people, it takes
Yeah.
months of training, right?
Yeah.
And certification, you know.
Yeah.
And I think OSHA, I think the level of OSHA, those guys consume. But you
That's
find,
right.
you know, some random guy just climbs on a roof and starts nailing panels on somebody's roof,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And you know, so I think those people are very well qualified, even way more qualified, even, you know,
Entirely.
to be active in our industry. So yeah.
So true.
So it's people, we should think about it that way, right? Not just like these are people that, how do we train them? No, you know, these are
Yeah.
very well experienced. And you know, I read a lot of articles that come through, you know, that get published, and it's surprising that these articles don't get the publicity that is warranted, right?
Yeah.
But then you find some weird stuff getting the news and all that, but stuff like that, you know. But we're getting there. I mean, with people like you doing what you're doing, right? And many others trying to do some stuff. So yeah, so
Yeah.
you're absolutely right with what you're doing, and there's a lot of benefit in that. So well, this has been exciting. This has been we and I have been planning this for a while. We finally made it happen.
Yeah.
I listened to the podcast. We even carry some episodes on PV Buzz,
Thank you for that.
and we will continue doing that.
Mhm.
And hey, this is the solar industry. Let's keep it booming.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a
Well,
PV buzz. There's a PV buzz about let's keep the buzz going.
yeah, let's keep the buzz going. And make sure we keep fighting the good fight. Well,
Yeah.
Nico, it was awesome having you on the show.
Thank you.
And the next time we get you on the show, maybe we should, maybe when the pandemic is over, we might do this face to face. Who knows?
We will
right?
have to. Absolutely. If
And
not before, it'll be at SPI.
be at SPI, and it will be a good. I think some guy, one of my friends was just telling me the other day that at the end of this pandemic, probably people will just book flights and then decide where they're going in the air. So it's like, how do you even book a flight without knowing where you're going? It's like people wouldn't care. It's like,
I know.
Just get in.
That's cool.
All right, man. It's been a blast, and
Great to see you.
catch
Thanks
you
for
in the
having
next
me.
one. All right, bye.
Yeah, appreciate you, man.